All right. Good morning, everyone. I'd like to welcome you again to one of our webinars. SF, this is the third offering that we're doing for this year, and we have quite a very interesting. We have a very interesting topic, care of a very prominent speaker, prominent banker, who will be introduced later on by Vicky. So with that, I'd like to first show you the agenda that we have for today. Vicky, would you like to show this morning's agenda? So we'll start with an opening prayer, and then our speaker will be introduced by Vicky Del Rosario, our first Vice President. And then our speaker will give a talk. After that, we'll have an open forum that will be led by myself and Arlene, and then we will have the closing remarks. So we'll start now with the opening prayer. May I call on Ms. Bridget Ignacio, one of our trustees in CHESAP, to lead the opening prayer.
Okay. Hello. Okay. We begin this webinar and this prayer by putting ourselves in the presence of our Lord, our God, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit.
Amen.
Dear Almighty and ever-loving God, we glorify and thank your name. You have showered us with so much blessings, and your presence continuously reminds us of your faithfulness and guidance. May we humbly ask you to bless our speaker, Mr. Ed Francisco, that he may be able to impart to us the financial wisdom that we need to maximize the blessings you provide. May we, the participants, absorb the invaluable knowledge, experience, and put it into practice what we may learn today. We pray that you bless the College of the Holy Spirit Alumni Foundation, that we may be able to fulfill our tasks responsibly, and that the objectives we have set may all be achieved. This we ask and pray to Christ our Lord. Amen. In the name of the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Amen.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Good morning.
May I now call Ms. Vicky De Rosario to introduce our speaker.
Okay. Before I start, hello, fellow alumni and guests. I'm happy to see familiar and new faces today. We welcome and thank you all for joining your CHS Alumni Foundation this morning for this webinar on investment options. Undeniably, we all look after our finances, but given the recent local and global developments with its volatile issues and personalities, there must be a myriad of questions in our minds. Our esteemed guest will hopefully answer most, if not all, of those questions. CHESAP is honored to have a distinguished and honorable guest in the person of Mr. Eduardo V. Francisco. Let me introduce Ed properly. Eduardo V. Francisco heads the investment banking group of BDO Unibank Inc. and holds several positions in BDO. He is president of BDO Capital and Investment Corporation, chairman of Averon Holdings Corporation, and is a board advisor of BDO Securities Corporation. He sits on several nonprofit boards such as the Development Center for Finance, CIBI Foundation, Shareholders Association of the Philippines, Finex Foundation, International School of Manila, UP College of Business Alumni Association, and the Valle Verde Country Club, Inc. He's also a member of Makati Business Club and the Polo Triathlon team. Ed is a former chairman of the BDO Nomura Securities Incorporated and chairman for the International Association of Financial Executives, IAFEI. He was the co-chairman of the Capital Market Development Council of the Philippines, vice chairman of the Integrity Initiative, and has been the president of the Management Association of the Philippines, Finex Executives Institute of the Philippines Institute, Wharton Pen Club, BDO Securities Corporation, Makati Sports Club, Federation of Valle Verde Associations, and First Valle Verde Association. Mr. Francisco has worked with other financial institutions in New York and Hong Kong. He holds an MBA from the Wharton School of the University of Pennsylvania and a bachelor's degree in business administration from the University of the Philippines. He recently received a Lifetime Achievement Award for his contribution to the local capital markets from from Alpha Southeast Asia. He is a recipient of Financial Management Excellence from the University of the Philippines and the Distinguished Alumnus Award from the UP College of Business Administration. He was honored by BizNews Asia as one of the nation builders and was an Asia Leaders Awards Mentor of the Year finalist. Ed lectures occasionally at the Ateneo de Manila Graduate School of Business and the University of the Philippines. He is a frequent speaker for local and international conferences and is a regular guest for business news of several local TV stations. Ed is married to Mora Criselda Castro and has 2 children, Isabel Marie and Gabriel Antonio Scabsi. Ed is also the eldest brother of a famous Jesuit composer, musician, and a cousin of a famous composer arranger. You probably guessed who they are. Without further ado, may I present a longtime friend, our speaker, Eduardo Valdez Francisco.
Hi, good morning. Thank you, Vicky, for that. That was actually it sounds better than it is. Anyway, I just wanted to make everybody feel comfortable. This is a Saturday anyway. Thank you for taking the time to join us. Basically, my objective is to make kwento lang naman this morning and then do a Q&A. Because frankly, Vicky is my kumare, a long-time kumare, Vicky and Noli. And in fact, when you think of the August people on this panel, from Bridget, from Dada, I guess, and everybody else, no? Kayo ang mga sikat eh. That's why nga eh. All of you have, I guess, accomplished so much. And ako naman, I'm just here lang to share. As what Bridget said, my objective is to share my knowledge. I'm not an expert in everything. I try to keep updated, but I'm just going to share my whatever I can also. Kasi same as you. I want to protect my investments, and I guess we're at the stage in life where I'm more concerned now. At least I want to have a nest egg. So if I get sick, kasi kung hindi na tayo insured, hindi na tayo covered ng insurance, I also want the nest egg so that for my apos, although wala pa ang apo, buti pa sila Vicky, may apo na ako, wala pa. And then also for the future, so I can travel. So it's really that. And at least I'm not like some of your other esteemed colleagues here who are world-renowned authors, divers, and maybe just let's just mute others, but who are not world-esteemed photographers, divers, and even ang tawag nito? Weights, no, powerlifting for the country. So I haven't done that, but hopefully I'll do something like that in the future, but not destroy my knee. Anyway, maybe let's go to the presentation proper itself. Sige. This is the style I have. My slides have more details than what I will talk about. That is intentional. Kasi the board naman has permission to share the presentation to everybody. So just ask for a soft copy. There will be some slides I will highlight and say this is the important. Keep this as your código. Just keep it in your phone, keep it in your laptop or whatever. The other slides naman I'll just summarize quickly. Kasi frankly naman, some of us will get bored when I talk about economy. Some naman are experts already, so they don't care. Some are just mas importante na talaga on going directly into the presentation proper itself. No? So, okay, let's start with at least just some background on the economy where we're seeing it, just to make sure we're on the same track. Okay, next slide. Okay, everybody's concerned about inflation. No? Some of you naman, I think, are from, I guess we all went to good schools naman after, even after high school, diba? We all went to good school, so we learned some basics about economy. Anyway, Philip Medalla is very concerned about inflation, and that's why I guess they wanna fight it already. Even I guess Nesting Espinilla, the late Nesting Espinilla, the BSP has always been focusing on inflation fighting. That's their target. They wanted to keep it at 2 to 4%, but in reality, we're way beyond that. Diba? We're already at 6%. I think the other day, the announcement. But we're still lucky because compared to the US, it was I think it was 9.1%. So theirs is really out of control. So what the BSP did is to surprise everybody. Was it yesterday or the day before, where they increased rates by another 0.75 or 75 basis points. Now, the objective is really to slow down the economy to bring prices down. Okay. Now the question is, will we see more? I think we'll see more increases, maybe another 50 basis points. Maybe the rest of the year, we'll see how it goes. The beauty lang of that is that it strengthened the peso, right? Because when that was announced, that same morning, we're tracking the peso. I think the peso was 56.40, 56.50 already earlier before the announcement. And then when it announced, the peso strengthened to 56.10. Because of course, as we increase rates, that means people will keep their pesos also more in the Philippines. There's more attractiveness to keep the peso rather than sell pesos and buy dollars. That's what was happening, because when the interest rates in abroad are higher in the States, everybody was going there, right? Now, let's go to the next slide. Feel free to ask questions and later on, just put it in the chat box, because sila Cora nga, one of my idols will be our esteemed co-panelists or later on during the Q&A, so we can have a healthy discussion. This slide naman is important because it just shows where rates are, and the key nga is that the Fed might continue to increase. They will continue to increase because they really have to bring inflation down. It's critical. And then in a way, susunod na lang tayo. What does that mean though for us? That means expect rates to go higher also. And that also has an impact on your investments. No? Because today, for example, you can get a government security of almost 7% for 5-7 years now. But if the rates will go up, in theory, government rates could go up to 7.5%, 8% by end of the year. So it also means that if you invested today at 7, malulugi rin kayo, because if you waited a year, baka maging 8. Diba? But on the other hand, you also want to catch whatever you invest. So we'll talk about those as the investment options later on. Next slide. Okay, this slide lang just shows inflation and the policy rate. But anyway, the key lang talaga is the BSP is using inflation as I guess, policy rates to temper inflation. So expect more of that. Hopefully, not as dramatic anymore, because I think Philip Medalla has done that already. So we'll see slower growth, hopefully in the next few months. Next slide. Here also, what this slide shows is that because of the volatility, it just shows that yields will continue to go up. So it also means that investment rates are higher, or the hurdle is higher. And it also means for you guys, tayo investors, we should also be expecting higher investment rates. The rule of thumb, remember, there's the risk reward, very important. The higher the risk, the higher dapat the rewards. No? So the most risky assets are equities, but they're still good investments. We'll talk about that later. But you should expect higher returns. The lowest risk, and I have a pyramid. I'll just explain the investment classes later on as a reminder to everybody. But the safest investments are cash or government securities, and that's where you should get lower. You should be happy with lower rates because pwede kayo matulog, nakasandal kayo. But the more risky investing, then you should also expect higher returns. Okay, next slide. Here lang quickly, just showing the different performance of currencies. Although I do not endorse speculating in currency, currencies are very difficult to track, but you can go long on certain currencies. For example, the US dollar is something that I think we should be investing in. In fact, it's strengthened so much, as some of you have been following it. If you have relatives in Europe, it's already it even met at par with the euro. Before it was more 1.2, 1.3, right? US dollar to euro. Now it's already 1, or I think it was below 1. because US dollar became a safe haven. Some of you might even disagree. Why is the US dollar a safe haven when in reality they might even have a recession, no? But I guess relative to other countries, people see the US dollar pa rin as safe, so that's why it's been flocking there. And then of course, some of you already, because we're closer, we're in Asia. Ako, and I will touch a bit later on, but I recommend also buying the I guess the yuan, the Chinese renminbi, because I think that will continue to get stronger, and China is there. So if you want to diversify into US dollars and into renminbi, but don't actively trade it. It's hard to make bantay FX talaga. I don't believe in that. Just buy it and just keep it there, open accounts, or invest in some assets in yuan or US dollar, and then just let believe good assets, and then let your money, park your money there. Okay, next slide. Here, just showing interest rates, but the key lang talaga is that interest rates will continue to go up, no? This is the balance of inflation, further, the breakdown, but admittedly, I was just checking, in fact, this before we started, I guess oil prices are down to 100, which is good, right? But because we're predominantly dependent on oil, and then of course you see the large swings on your gasoline pag nagpapa-full tank. Grabe, no? That ang mahal na, even diesel is so expensive. So since food and prices will be there, people are talking about delayed impacts on cost of goods. But I guess when I talk to my corporate clients also, they're trying as much as possible not to pass the cost of increases sa ating consumers, di ba? Kasi if they do, ang laki ng taas ng bilihin, it's also hard for us. But that's one way of sustaining inflation. Then babagsak talaga yung demand. So they're trying to manage their spreads. But if some of them will inevitably have to pass it on to us, then we'll feel that. So that's the impact. And of course, there'll be further importations. Next slide. Here, I guess just the composition of the GDP. Anyway, what's more important is really, from our perspective, are we still seeing growth? Yes. So, diba, in the US, if you step back, one of the key takeaways, hopefully this morning, is that relative to the other countries, they already are worried about a recession. Here, I'm not worried about a recession, or at least me and my colleagues, or the views of the finance people. Recession is not a possibility in the Philippines. Maybe it's good and bad. Hindi pa tayo nakakalabas sa starting gate, di ba? Kung karera to, because tagal-tagal ng COVID natin and mobility lockdowns. Tapos magre-recession tayo. So nag-recession na nga tayo because of COVID. So ngayon pa lang tayo bumabawi. So it's very unlikely. But of course, we're affected. So our growth will be slower. People are saying baka 5 or 6% na lang, or even less than the targeted. But I'm very high. I'm still positive of the growth. And maybe to touch on that, the next slide is a little bit about our debt, because some people were worried about our debt. And our view also is that the debt in the Philippines is still manageable. Yes, we had to borrow, and that was it was fair. We had to borrow because we needed for medicines, for COVID, pantulong sa mga tao. Those were all worth it. The key lang talaga with this new administration, they should have enough projects, sana, whether PPP and others, and other tax measures should happen, so that there'll be revenues to support these projects. But we are not sobra sa utang. Kaya natin yan. So it's still very manageable, and compared to other countries, we're still in pretty good shape. And that's why at least the Philippines is still we're in a good position. Admittedly, I don't know with some of you, maybe karamihan sa atin, or let's say we're pink, and some of us who were, when the news came out of who's going to win, we're considering migrating. But at least what we're seeing is that the economic managers are very good so far. They're all very knowledgeable. We're very impressed, and even the recent appointment of the Energy Secretary, Secretary Lutilla, these are all professionals. We like them. This is from the management side. DPWH, DOF, MB, etc. are all Balisakan of NEDA are all very good people. So we are not afraid of staying in the country. Parang kumbaga, there's still hope. That's what I want to say. Next slide. Okay, so this slide just shows the debt to GDP, and it shows we're still very low. In fact, the US and Japan have worse debt ratios than us, and yet look at the rating. So sometimes the rating is also very unfair. They say we're riskier, but in reality, mas madaming problema pa nga sa US. In fact, sila pa ngayon nagla-lockdown, di makabayad ng mga empleyado minsan nila, di ba? Next slide. So that's the public debt. And the next slide so is also just some of the inflation and other asset classes. This slide is very important also. Please take note of this slide for the future, because it just compares. I think we did this in the last year. Look at if you invested only in pesos, you would have lost money. Treasury, you have lost money. Basically in fixed income, you have lost money because as interest rates go up, if you lock in, malulugi ka. If you invested naman in renminbi, you would have made money, the currency. If you invested in other currencies, you also didn't make money. Example, in the bottom left, equities, talo pa rin ng konti. But if you invested in some US equities, you would have made money. But where would you have made money? If you invested in coal or wheat, of course, right? Those are commodities. How could you have invested in coal, as an example, without necessarily physically buying coal? If you invested, for example, in Semirara or DMCI, you would have made lots of money. Or if you invested maybe in Nickel Asia, because they're in commodities, or because Semirara sells coal to the power plants. So those are indirect ways of investing. Cora Guidot and I were talking about earlier. Let's say, did you want to buy gold? You could have also bought gold producers instead if you could not buy gold, because in the past, like Cora, you could go to Hong Kong and then just buy ingots or whatever, small statues, and then those are based on weight anyway, and tumataas yung value. Okay, next slide. So here lang is the consensus, at least the last slide on this, at least the background economy. These are our projections. We see GDP growing for the US pa rin, but inflation is much higher. You see that, see? Fed rates are going up to 1.8%, where it was 1.5 last quarter. In terms of the Philippines, we're hoping it will reach 6.8, but that's, I think, outdated na. Baka 5.5 to 6 na lang. Inflation hopefully will go down. It's starting to go down already, and that's why pump prices have been going down. And the peso dollar, that was still our earlier projection, although it's way past that already. Hopefully it will go back down to 55 or 54 by end of the year, as we catch up on interest rates and things stabilize. So at least for those of you who are importing with businesses, the peso also will strengthen. Hopefully it will stabilize, so that's good. Interest rates will continue to be up, but hopefully not go up as much, because we don't want someone to strangle you for your working capital and for your inventory. So that's the first part. I'll go now to the next part, which is the market. Next slide. Okay. The next slide, naman, in the market, basically, I talk primarily about equities and debt because that's what my day-to-day job is. No? So Philippine index, equity index is something worth investing in. It's very cheap already. The only problem is it still could go lower because pag nagkasipon na ang US, sometimes nagkakatrangkaso tayo. So it's more global already. If it were just domestic, our Philippine corporates are doing well. They're already outperforming. A lot of them have already gone past COVID. Just an example, no? Just to give you an idea, kasi for me, one of the indications I look at to see how the economy is doing is nagtatanong, let's say, Cora and I Cora used to, in fact, be the IR for the SM Group, so a very important position. But I heard from Hansi, I asked about the foot traffic in the malls, right? Because the malls are a good indicator kung lumalabas na tao. So apparently, the foot traffic in the malls, in the SM malls, because I think we still account for 50 or 60% of the total retail in the country. So if you know SM is going, you know where the country is going because it's an indicator, right? But anyway, foot traffic is already in weekends is already above the 2019 level. So before COVID, mas mataas na siya ngayon, weekend. But weekdays, the average foot traffic is still below pre-COVID levels. So it's interesting. You say, wait, di ba dapat the same all throughout the week? And then apparently pala, the reason is kasi a lot of people are still work from home despite dapat everybody should be working already, going to office. A lot of people work from home. Therefore, Monday to Friday, since they're at home, hindi na sila lumalabas para magmerienda, mag-lunch, and mababalik sa office. They're just in their houses para di na lumabas. And then weekends lang sila na lumalabas kaya mas taas yung traffic during weekends. But anyway, what does that mean? That's why at least when I talk to mga Pure Gold, Robinsons, SM Supermarkets, our clients, our meat suppliers, diba? Pure Foods, etc., even Bounty. Of course, cost of goods are going up. It's harder to source because the importations, but the demand is still there. There's demand for lots of the goods now. So that's from the commodity side, diba? And then when I talk also to Meralco, the Meralco sales are already past or better already than pre-COVID. So why is that good? That's good because that means that people are needing electricity, and therefore there's going to be growth because the use of electricity is very important. When I also talk, let's say, to Dennis Uy of Converge and the broadband usage, continued ang demand ng continued use of broadband and PLDT when I talk to them. So why is that important? Because that means that growth is there, the infrastructure needs are there, they're being built because we need all of this broadband for data, for digitalization, for more e-commerce. So things are moving in the right direction. In fact, to the point na my concern pa nga is sana wala ng brownouts because magkukulangan tayo ng kuryente. But if you think about it, that's why also there are people like San Miguel and Rambuan trying to build more airports because we're already preparing for that surge, diba? When people travel more and there'll be more people coming in, it's still very optimistic. We're seeing that. Even car sales, as you know, when you read the newspaper, tumaas na rin, diba? Sales are going up. In fact, may shortage na nga ng cars worldwide in general because people have started to buy cars again. Okay? So inflation is hopefully being managed. The US dollar rate hopefully will strengthen. Next slide. Okay. Now, now what else? We're saying, of course, so aside from inflation, equities are already cheap. If you are gonna invest in general, the themes we always like, you invest in conglomerates because conglomerates are cheap now and they're a hedge. They're reflective of the Philippines. If you wanted to invest, put your money in Ayala or SM today, let's say, or even JG Summit. Now, although JG Summit natamaan lang because of Cebu Pacific, LT Group, of course, they've done very well because of their, I guess Philip Morris is continuing to do well. Philip Morris, their joint venture. Their Tanduay has done well. Their beers have done well. Of course, the bank has not done so well, PNB. And of course, they got hit because of PAL. But other than that, at least the real estate side is picking up. Their other investments are doing well. So that's one way to invest. The other way to other good sector also the banks because their non-performing loans are already better managed. There's growth we're seeing. There's already significant growth back in the economy. So our profitability will be also swinging upwards together with the economy. People also said, should we buy real estate property stocks? Yes and no, only because now the property prices, of course, got hit last year, but during COVID went down. Now it's improving. Demand is picking up. The only problem now is because as interest rates go up, people who were planning to buy condos before, medyo matatabangan because the cost of owning is higher because their amortization is go up significantly. Because as interest rates have gone up maybe 2% na in the borrowing rate in the last few months, kung tataas pa yan lalo, it means that what they'll be able to buy might be less. So that's going to be a problem. The financing lang and the demand for more condos. But of course, telcos are doing well. Electricity, utilities are doing well. Those are very good investments, and I think you should continue to buy them. Okay, next slide. Here is the risk-return trade-off. I'm just saying, on the right side, on the lowest left-hand side, CASA, T-bills, etc., money market funds, those are generally safe. That's why the yields are lower. In the middle, the government bonds, corporate bonds. Corporate bonds can include Ayala, SM, Aboitiz. Those are the good bonds to invest in. Generally naman, ngayon, there's a dearth of corporate bonds. Whenever we issue anything, usually ang demand is 10 times what the offer is. So sobrang demand because you are like you want higher rates. You're not happy with 1% CASA, whatever. So when an Ayala comes out and SM comes out with a 6% bond, ubus ka agad. But try to buy those if you can, because those are the ones that give you better returns. And of course, the right side, the more riskier ones are common equity, common stock, other funds, and I'll talk about them later on. Okay, next slide. Here, this slide is also important. So parang kumbaga in your códigos, mark this page because this is the investment pyramid I was talking about, or the risks. The bottom of course is the riskier, kaya it's near the ground. And the higher ones, the junk bonds, commodities, futures, are the ones that are riskier. I think there was a question also earlier when you're talking with the organizers. I guess crypto should also be there at the top of the pyramid. Crypto is risky. In fact, if you invested in crypto now, you would have lost a lot of money. Crypto, I think, is below 20,000 at one point, like $60,000, and then it's hovering around $30,000. Now it's around 20. There's still of course now because it's so low, there's a possibility to rebound, but you invest in lang commodities, crypto. My recommendation is this should be money that you should be willing to lose. Parang extra lang yan. Don't make that your primary kasi you could lose your shirts. Now, other asset classes that are not there, which I would recommend, and then I have an asset class allocation suggestion later on, but art, real estate can be there also because art, cars, other collectibles are there. And I'm sure some of you have a lot of that already. So natutulog lang, but nasa baol, or they're just investments, but they're also appreciating. Next slide. Here just an example of the average returns, but basically it's showing, of course, cash is safe. Kailan nakatulog lang, nasa baol lang, or sometimes naka-deposit lang sa bank, ang baba ng rate, but at least you're safe. And then fixed income is there, equity, and even the currency, the depreciation, the currencies are there. But generally, equities should have the highest returns, and they have historically. If you have a longer PC, put your money in equities. Some in equities na pwede kayong matulog. Usually, these are the top 30 stocks anyway. The PHISIX, those are the stocks, the best stocks to invest in generally, well managed, and then you'll have good returns. And then when miskin din yung binabantayan, they should do well. Okay, next slide. Here lang is the sample asset class. This is another código that I would recommend you note. Why? Because your investment strategy is not fixed. It changes depending on where you are in your life. Generally, the younger you are, the more risk a taker you are, di ba? Kasi parang we can fall and then we can pick ourselves up. We can work longer. Then therefore, you might have more in equity, as an example, diba? But maybe the reason here 18 to 25 kasi generally you're still not working, so you don't have other of these riskier assets like the 26 to 40, because sometimes you're already working. Let's say you're single, you start buying real estate already, you have jewelry already, you have listed equity at 40%, diba? That's riskier. As you go older, 40 to 45, usually you already have your family, you have kids already, you still have equity. See, I put a lot of that. Then you should have cash, but you already have real estate because bumili na kayo ng bahay nyo. Then you'll have more cars already, more jewelry. As you go later on, when you're nearing retirement on 56, although now retirement is technically 65 already, or as a good example pa nga, si Noli Del Rosario, the better half, or the assistant of Vicky, supposedly retired, pero ang dami niya, he's busier now than he was in the past, so daming sideline, so which is good, because mentally, at least it keeps us busy, but at the same time, at least you're still earning something. Kaya doon ako believe sa inyo. But basically, you see, real estate is very important, jewelry is very important. Buy something because you like it, but you never know, it will appreciate. I remember, I think I was invited to an art fair also a few years back. So if you bought Sanso or a cheap HR Ocampo din, baka nagdoble. Here's another thing to think about. During COVID, di ba? Because a lot of us couldn't travel, right? So what went up? Car prices went up, especially the more expensive cars, the Porsches, the Benzes, etc. went up. Why? Because the rich always have money, but they had nowhere to go. They were stuck in the Philippines. So what did they do? They bought expensive cars na lang kaysa walang magawa. Instead of traveling, that's my investment, my toy. So nagtaasan, naubos yung mga Porsche. Ang Porsche, dati, let's say, an older Porsche you could get for 2 million, now 3, 4 million, almost 60% increase. And you think it's not a worthwhile investment, so totoo it was. Some of you, for example, maybe your husbands or you wear a Submariner, for example, or a Rolex. I had the Rolex before, but I needed money. I sold it for 160,000. I asked how much a Rolex now is. I think the list price is, or what's the ongoing price for a brand new Rolex now is mga 450. The green Rolex, a Hulk, is around 750, and that's not even brand new. Even if you had money, if you wanted to buy a Patek, you cannot buy because there's nobody selling. So just to give you an idea, especially for the ultra rich, there is always money there. So depending on the market you also serve. And maybe later on, we can ask Dada Kua for her thoughts because she might be one of those with those collections. Diba? If you buy collections of bags, yes, they're expensive, but in fact, they might also appreciate. So if you like them, at the same time, they appreciate, okay lang, diba? In a certain portion there. Even, diba, as you know, diba, Punta Fuego, all these expensive houses. Aman, the houses, the condos, ng taasan. Because during COVID, if you had money, where do you go? Wala. So, bumili ka lang ng magandang rest house, you stay there with your family because, your kids are stuck home anyway. So, at least rather than stay in Manila in a condo, stay in a rest house, buy a rest house, and stay there. And that's what happened kaya nagtaasan. Okay, so think about it this way also. The middle class and the CD are affected. They had to tighten their belts. But the ultra rich ng taasan, because I also talked to some of the clients, they had these expensive brands in the casino, these stores, these t-shirts and these other rubber shoes. So pasensya lang, I don't even know what they are when they mention them. But sabi ko, how are the sales? Grabe, during COVID, ang taas ng sales, ang daming bumibili. Because revenge spending rin, revenge retail. Wala sila magastos, so dun nilang gastos, binibili nila. That's their satisfaction, that's their outlet. So that will still happen. Okay, next slide. Here also, this slide also important. It's just saying that in addition to investing in crypto, in art, in real estate, jewelry, gold, you might also want to invest in other currencies. Because admittedly, if you invested in the US, especially 2 years ago, they did so well. Tech stocks did so well. Of course, it goes ups and down, but you would have done so much investing in US dollars. Tapos ano pa? Ang ganda ng returns. Again, sometimes it's relative, but of course, the thing there is you have to know also. You have to have advisors helping you with that. Okay, next slide. Here, other classes lang. I just wanted to touch on it. REIT, Real Estate Investment Trusts. There are a couple existing in the Philippines. I was involved in most of them. They will give you a yield of around 5 to 6%. When we did the Vista Land, I think a few weeks back, it was the target yield was around 8%. REIT, if you invest as an individual, the tax is only 10%. So if let's say if the dividend is, let's say 6% times 0.9, not if you invest a 6% a bond, 20% in tax. So 6 times 0.8 kasi 20% ang tinatanggal, 4.8. If you invest in a stock, 10%, if you get 6%, you get 5.4, 6 times 0.9. Okay, remember that. I'll have a chart also later on the taxes para where to invest, para you see the samples. So therefore, you get a higher after-tax return on a REIT. So it's also something you might want to consider because instead of buying land directly, you might just buy a REIT because you also have upside from the land and you have the dividends from the real estate investors. Parang nakikibakas na lang tayo from the real estate developers itself. Okay, preferreds are another preferred shares you can buy also in the stock exchange or another kind. Megawide SMC generally has preferreds, also good yields, and you can get close to 6%. If they come out with some more, that's something you might want to invest in also. Sometimes also kasi the issuers, these are the borrowers. Borrowers, pag debt, pag corporate issues, pag equity or preferred share, they call them issuers. But it's the same. These are the San Miguel's, these are the Ayalas. Of course, sila rin, they try to raise money as low as possible. So now, nagdadagsaan, we're trying to raise so much out there. But also, pag masyadong mataas, these issuers sometimes can prepay or refinance them at a lower rate. So that's what's been happening. Okay, next slide. Other stocks are another way to invest also. But now a lot of the real estate companies are selling at a discount because parang feeling lang some investors are seeing pa rin na I guess you just have to select the investor kasi sometimes kung walang tenants rin, ang hirap. Here is just something to think about. Before COVID, our recommendation was to buy real estate companies that had a good recurring income, meaning they were a lot of leasing income or they had malls because they had other revenues, right? But if you think about it, if you bought those companies, those are the Ayalas, the SMs, Robinsons, natamaan rin sila during COVID. Why? Because in the Philippines, it's just medyo abnormal. In other countries, diba, pag yung tenant ka, you're the landlord, pwede mo pa rin habulin, singilin, or may reprieve ka from the government. Remember here in the Philippines, it's just the corporates sumalo. Sinalo ng mga big guys, yung mga tenants, di sila naningil. Although in theory, pwede na siningilin. Pero wala silang reprieve from the government. So they have to absorb these losses. So in a way, these supposedly good recurring income of the real estate companies were the causes for their losses. Robinsons, SM Ayala, because they had to absorb the losses from not being able to charge the tenant. Some of them still are very good now. Kusa lang sino-charge or as a percentage of sales, hindi na yung X pesos per square meter. But it's changing as the economy improves anyway. Makakabayad. Now they're recovering. But just to give an idea, that's why at least these are good hedges. But in a way, it also affected us because we are in a different situation. Okay, but real estate is a good investment. Just to mention that on the rule of thumb, dapat 8% yung return mo for real estate. So if you buy 1 million, if you're gonna rent it, ideally it should be earning you 8%. 8% of 1 million is what? 80,000 pesos. So 80,000 pesos divide 12, ideally you should be renting it for around 7,000 or 6,000 a month to get your return. But that's assuming flat. But in reality, when you buy real estate also, even if break even ka lang sa rent, in reality, if the prices will go up 8% a month or 5% a year, then kumikita ka na rin. That's one way. And as mentioned earlier, in our energy investment stocks, Meralco, Boitis, they should be continuing to do well. First gen, so you will have good yields from them. PLDT. Next slide. Power also, of course, very important. Food is also good. Kaya lang, di ba, like recently natamaan ng Mondanism because of this scare, this ethylene, these chemicals. They claim naman na wala naman sila na, but hopefully things will recover. But other food companies are doing well, like Century Pacific's done extremely well. They also bought Potato Corner and Ligo Sardines recently. So they're doing well. They're seeing growth against there. Even some of these unlisted companies that I help, they're doing well. Kasi nga, a lot of people really bought a lot of canned goods, even the basics. They're very strong. The meat companies, the chicken companies. The problem na lang they have is the sourcing, diba? Or especially if they're integrated, if you have a poultry or if you have your own bakahan, the cost now for the corn, for the feeds is becoming more expensive, so they have to pass it on. But in general, there's always demand there. Okay? There's very little tech in the companies, in the country. So if you want to buy tech, buying Apple or Tesla, buy abroad. But you can also buy through us. I'll explain that later on. Next slide. Okay, this slide is a código also of the sample asset classes, yields, and taxes. Please take note of this. This is an important código that you should keep because it's a summary of the taxes of the different asset classes. Why is it important? Always look at it on an apples to apples basis. Look at it on an after tax basis. You get 6% on a corporate bond versus 6% on a stock. Let's say you're going to get 6%. Where is it better to invest? No, the stock, because the tax on the stock is only 10% versus 20%. But example, I have a question to you. Let's say Here, let's see what I have here. I think it's LTNCDs. Okay. Let's say BDO was going to offer you 4% on an LTNCD. Okay, 4%. LTNCD, you're buying as an individual. But you could get 4.2% from example lang, let's say XYZ Bank. 4.2%, but corporate bond. Where would you invest? The BDO LTNCD or the 4.2 corporate bond? They are both, let's say, 5 years. What's your guess? The answer there is you buy the LTNCD. Why? Because an LTNCD, if you're an individual, is always tax-free, it's zero. So yung 4% mo, advertise, you'll get 4% net. If you bought a corporate bond na 4.2, whether issued by a bank or a corporate, the tax is 20%. So 4.2 times 2 is mga 84 basis points. So roughly, your net is mga 3.4 lang. So that's very important. Good question. Thank you for coming out, Susan. LTNCD is long-term negotiable certificate deposit. So it's like a time deposit, but parang when it is longer than 5 years, they call it an NCD. And there's this tax loophole up to now, but sa 5 years or more, it's tax-free pag individual. Okay? So those are things that are important. Also, just to touch on it, I said stocks in general are 10% taxed, right? But some of you who are more astute investors, if you have a holding company already and you set up a holding company and then the stocks are bought through that holding company, the dividends received by your investment holding companies are zero. Okay? So again, if let's say PLDT was giving you a yield of 6%, if you bought it as an individual, your net after tax on your dividend is 6 times 0.9, 5.4%. If you bought the stock under a holding company, it's 6. Okay. So maybe not touch on that. You can ask some companies, BDO Private Bank, or even your others who are lawyers here, to set up an investment company where you should put your assets. Why is that useful? Maybe I'll just touch on it a bit. If you are at the point, or we are at the point, maybe most of us here are seniors, diba? Kasi I understand nga the organizer, she invited other batchmates or other classes that might be younger ones. The problem we now have is that our children are getting older and they want to get their mana. I have many friends, and I'm sure you have the same situation, when you have many properties. Ideally, you want to be fair to everybody, di ba? Dapat equal. Paano yan? Ang hirap magbenta ng property. Tapos, kunyari, isang property is worth 50 million, isang property is worth 40 million. Ang hirap na, ibibigay mo isa sa 50, sa favorite mo, o sa panganay, and then yung next in 40. Unfair. Diba dapat kung 50 and 40, example lang, 90 million, dapat tigpo 45 million sila. Paano mo gagawin yung kung property? May suklian. So, ang hirap. If you have the whole investment company, put it all into a holding company. Say, well, let's call it lang Kua or Del Rosario Investments Holding Company. Basically, although hindi naman problema nila Vicky and Noli because they only have one child, but let's say you had several children, by putting it there, at least they will get shares of stock. Then, if you sell anything there, they will get pro rata their shares of stock, their dividends. That's one way to look at it. So, if kung konti lang investments nyo, it's not worth doing an investment holding company. But if you have investments already with several properties, you can even put your stocks, your bonds there, your gold, then it's worth doing. It's worth considering. I recommend that. And there are people, specialists who can help you set that up. Okay, I just touched on that a bit, but that's also another tip. Okay, real estate can be put in there, even your bonds. Next slide. Okay, so this código is important. This slide. Okay, here now is a BDO touchpoint código. I apologize. I will just go through this quickly. Why am I showing this? It's just an example. I'm not advertising BDO. I'm here as a friend, really, of Vicky and Cora and Bridget and Dada kasi kaibigan ko na sila matagal na. I'm just doing this because I want to help. Pero what I just wanted to show is that, first of all, here's another reality. Your investment options are also based on how much money you have. sorry to say this, if you only have 10,000 or less than 100,000 put, or 1 million or less, very limited lang yung options mo. If you had 10 million to put, effectively, you're already a BDO private bank customer. If you had 50 million to put, you are actually a Goldman Sachs or a UBS customer and you have more options, you know, or a private bank customer if you have 20 million. If you had, let's say, 1 or 2 million to put, 3 million to put, you can BDO trade. So kumbaga, even in BDO, rightly or wrongly, parang we segment the clients. Diba? If you're a do-it-yourself person, then you just talk to the branch or you just talk to BDO trade because you can trade stocks. But you will not get investment advice. But you have to have a certain size, or because you'll be paying fees already, to get a private banker, dedicated private banker, to give you advice, to help you set up your family constitution, to help set up that investment holding company, or to help buy stocks, Tesla, Apple abroad, diba? Because we have all of that. But basically, it's not all of that to everybody. Depends on your asset class. So I just wanted to tell you that other banks have their similar options also. But this slide is a código. And then I will just go through it quickly so that if should you need, depending on where you are, your services, then I have contact persons where you can go directly to them. Okay? Kasi kami naman, we are all things, we try to do, parang kumbaga, we're a financial services supermarket. So we have it. Even our private bank sells Citibank, Goldman Sachs, PIMCO, BlackRock. We have all those investments. So we tie up with others so we can invest in these stocks all over the world for you. Okay, but which you cannot do naman if you only have 10,000 or 100,000. But despite that, later on during the Q&A, if you had 100,000, 20,000, we'll still discuss where can you put your money, because syempre, that's the objective. If you for your children, for example, what do you do? Maybe I'll digress a bit, but that's part of anyway sharing. What I did is for some friends, someone in Valle Verde Country Club, because I was involved with the swimming team. So we call our swimming team there the Aqualaser. So Aqualaser parents, let's have one seminar. I had an investment seminar for them. I taught them how to invest in equities. Then I even said, parents, if you don't mind, let's say giving your children, let's say 20,000 pesos, actual money, you open a BDO securities trading account. So it's parang it's on the parent and then managed with the children. They're able to invest in stocks. Why is that? Because we wanted them to actually manage money, to learn to make money from the stock market, or learn to lose, but at least learn why they're losing money, so they become better in handling money. So we did that for one summer, binabantay namin, manage namin. So at least they know what to look for in stocks. They know how dividends work, how to calculate. It's very useful. It's a good experience. It's harder kasi to do it kung theoretical, but here, kung may pera talaga sila, even 5,000 pesos, you can invest, matututo yung mga anak natin. So that's just a side thing that you can do also with your children. Okay. So this is important. Okay, next slide. Here lang kasi, under my shop kasi, I handle the investment banking group, but under the investment banking group, BDO Securities, the equities brokerage, and BDO Prime is under me. Talk more about it, but those at least under directly me, so you can email me, text me, I can give you referrals there. Okay, next slide. So online trading, if you like kasi, again, here is another thing. Especially those of you retired or those who like to dabble in stocks. It's also nice to be able to trade yourself because you want to make your own decisions, diba? You'll read up on a company, you know, information. You can buy it directly yourself. You can do it online or talk to our brokers. We can do that. We have two models in BDO Sec. So you can open an account. Pero in addition, it's also possible if you have no time, then you have an investment manager who'll be just buying and selling stocks for you. Depende kung anong gusto nyo. Diba? Kung hands-on kayo, you can do it yourself naman. Pwede naman someone will manage it for you kasi you're busy doing other things. You're busy working, you're busy managing your business, you're busy teaching your children, binabantayan nyo, so you have no time to follow investment. Then you have an investment manager. Okay, so we have those options. Next slide. And then here lang, so you can open an account, it's online, you can trade. That's all I wanted to say. And you can do that. You can, as long as you have a BDO account, it's easy to open a securities account. So you can access research. Kung mahilig kayo magbasa. Ako hindi ako mahilig magbasa, although I'm forced to. As much as possible, I'd rather watch on YouTube than it is to read. But maybe that's part of age also. Okay, next slide. And then here you get a daily digest, you get a weekly email. There are also presentations. There are free sessions, free webinars for our clients. Just so that you know. Next slide. I'm just going through this quickly lang naman. Every week, if you're an investor in BDO or invest BDO securities, you get this código. It's small, but this updated every week. Basically, we have the largest coverage, meaning of the 260 listed companies in the country, we make broker reports, in-depth research reports of around 40. We are the largest who does that because the foreign only follow the top 20 or the top 30. I think ours is 40 already. So at least under each column, we will say what the price is today, where we think it will be going, what we think the returns are. We recommend buy, sell, hold, etc. So that's why it's small, but when you expand it later and you'll see it will be bigger. But this is already outdated. But the thing is, you'll get this weekly, and it's also on our online app. So if you're a client, then you'll see our recommendations. Of course, some of them don't always happen because, frankly, if all our recommendations were correct, would make everybody billionaires. But generally, they also do well. And the thing here is sana you should be at least longer term investors. There are two kinds of investors in stocks. There are the traders na nagbabantay every day, go buy, sell quickly several times a day, and they're the longer term investors who believe more in the company. So the first one is more technical trading. They look at trends. The second one is more the fundamentals. They really study the company. My style of investing is I'm more the fundamentals. Hindi ako machismis. Ayoko yung parang buy now and then sell ka agad. I'm rather there na babantayan ko and then I'll follow it because I believe in it. I believe in management and what they're doing. So I have a longer PC. Doesn't necessarily always work, but generally it's worked on the average very well. So I made good money in the stocks because of that strategy. Okay. Sorry, there was a question earlier, Cynthia, but hindi ko nabasa, so maybe later on with Cora, we'll just read it na lang later, no? Sige. But I have contact persons. Next slide. So here is my contact persons for BDO security. So you will have the soft copies of here naman, so you don't have to write it down. There'll be a contact person about how to reach that person. Okay, next slide. Here also, BDO Prime is this new group we set up in BDO. So if you are not a 5 or 10 million investor client, but you have a little less, then we still have our relationship managers. Parang it's a step below. Parang if I was in airlines, BDO Private Bank, let's say, is our first class. Okay, you have all the amenities. BDO, after BDO Private Bank, BDO Prime is kumbaga business class. So you have already relationship management, research, etc. And then BDO Securities is more a platform. It's parang economy. It's parang already, I guess, economy with points. That's how we look at it. No? But at least you have all these abilities to do this stuff already. So BDO Prime, you have access into other investment, not just equity, not just stock. We can even give you advice on other feeder funds, etc. So that's all I wanted to say about that. Next slide. So fixed income, real estate investment trust, preferred shares, even global funds you can already invest with BDO Prime. And that's less. That's I think 5 million pesos. Next slide. And then generally with BDO Prime ka lang, BDO Prime or BDO Private Bank, our relationship managers already tell you there's a Philinvest bond coming on, there's a Ayala bond coming on, versus SM bond. Would you like to invest? There's an IPO coming on. For example, yesterday, kung nabasa yung Jared, there's this IPO of Alt Energy of Vince Perez. We're also the issue manager. We're involved there. Should you invest, or should you invested before in this CREIT, Citicorp Real Estate Investment Trust, the first non-real estate, but it's an investment trust in the company. Although it was a real estate investment trust because it's in power. Kaya rin gumawa nun. So I guess the thing about BDO, we're involved in the one part, talking to the issuers. We're all involved to the other part to distributing it. So parang end-to-end magkasama kami. Okay, so we will know what's happening there. And you talk to a relationship manager, she'll be able to invest. But of course, maski naman may contact kayo, minsan, recently, people who buy our clients, they get 1/5, 1/3 of what they want to invest because sa dami ng gusto magbumili, kulang minsan yung supply ng corporate bonds. Just so that you know. Next slide. So those are primary bonds. Primary means lalabas pa lang, bibili na kayo. Secondary means, kumbaga, it's already being traded. Somebody owns it, but kung naghahanap kayo, pwedeng bumili. We also are active, so we're active in the primary and the secondary. So parang kumbaga second hand, slightly used. Kunyari, 5 years pero 4 years to go.
Baka masarasaan tate pag
So
hindi
pwede
sa
ng ganyan. Okay. Next slide. Sige. Okay. And then here lang, these are some of the examples of the bond portfolios. Our relationship managers can also assist you with that. Because sometimes there are various ways to invest. For example, do you want to invest export? Example lang, 5,000 pesos of your salary every month, we'll just buy an investment. Pwede ganun para nakabantay, auto debit. We can do things like that. Or we can also structure it based on your needs, on your cash flows. Yeah. So that can be done. Okay, next. And also here, depending, are you focused more on dividend paying? For example, the stocks now with the best dividends are utilities because they're constant. Telcos, they also give good utilities. But for example, I don't know if you knew it. Here's an example lang for discussion. At one point, if you believe in climate change, you would have said, don't buy Semirara because it's coal. Don't buy DMCI because they're into power and their power generation companies are mainly coal. Okay. So therefore, you could have sold or not bought Semirara and DMCI. Okay, because you believe in climate change. But if you had invested in DMCI and Semirara, you would have probably doubled your money in the last year if you had invested. Because while we say coal is dirty, but because there's a shortage and because coal prices went up, energy prices went up, their share prices doubled. And their dividends now of a Semirara, if you buy, is almost close to 8 or 9%. So sometimes, in theory, we shouldn't invest here. But in reality, because nung Russia-Ukraine war, sino tumaas na stock? Coal-related. Diba? Because they supply the coal and we need the coal. Especially now, diba? Globalization is good. But in reality, what's happening is because nagkakanya-kanya tayo, nagkaka-food shortage, energy shortage. Instead of everybody before, the cheapest way is to have long-term contracts, buy all your coal from Indonesia, for example. But now Indonesia doesn't want to sell their coal anymore. So magkaka-shortage, tumataas price. Where do you run to? Semirara, as an example lang, diba? So those are things that are happening. Kayo, some of you in this seminar who are businessmen, diba? Before, we bought everything from China, mura. What happens now, nagtataas na ng presyo ng China or ayaw na lang magbenta? Where do we supply now? Nagkaka-problema tayo. So now, we buy more expensive, but it might be cheaper. And maybe in a way, that's why we are also seeing the Philippines benefit. Because, di ba, mataas ang kuryente sa Philippines, pero mas reliable ang workers natin sa China. So some, hopefully, multinationals as a hedge will reconsider the Philippines when in the past, sabi na mahal, but because our people are more reliable and etc., they might considering putting back some of the manufacturing here. In a way, we'll have those benefits. And also some of our corporations will have to, they're reviewing their supply chain. It's not anymore put all your eggs in one basket because masusunod ka. Okay? Just an example. Next slide. So here's an example of feeder fund. Feeder funds are other funds from other companies, BlackRock, PIMCO, etc., the world's largest asset managers, the Jardine Flemings. We can buy those for you. And in fact, I was surprised. We had this product to our BDO Singapore, BlackRock. You could get 6-7% yield on your dollar. So parang, if you have a certain amount of money, you have access to these returns. Ang ganda na rin. Dollar na, 6-7% pa yung return. And now, bumaba ng konti, but those are very good yields, diba? As compared to just here. Next slide. Okay, BlackRock, PIMCO, Wellington, T. Rowe Price. So those are some of the programs we have. Next. Okay, and then generally, just for your information, it's required by the BSP, and it's also part of us. When we become your investment managers, we have a questionnaire. Because diba, as I said, depends also on your risk appetite and are you sophisticated enough talaga to invest in these other products because syempre higher risk, higher return. But at the same time, we want you to be prepared for it in these investments. Next slide. So sample of some of the portfolios, just look at it in your spare time. I don't have to go through it now. Para lang you can study it. Next slide. Here lang, different mixes, different asset classes you invest. Kasi for example, when Vicky introduced me earlier, I am the trustee, for example, of International School of Manila. I've been the treasurer for the last 9 years. We have a bond portfolio. We invest abroad. We are willing to get lower returns because the objective of a school, for example, same thing kayo, you're very involved in CFC, HSAF, Alumni Foundation. And the strategy of a school is to manage the money. Diba? There's our fiduciary responsibility. We don't have to have the highest investments because if it would put more risk, we just want constant dividends. So that's what we told our investment manager. Lower risk, but we want steady growth. Steady growth, maski hindi masyadong bubulusok. And that's helped us during this volatile markets. When other investments crashed, we, instead of making 5% return on our dollars, we're making, let's say, 3%. Pero still, hindi naman kami nalugi. Versus iba, nalugi 20-30%. So depende on what you wanted to do. Now, if you're as an investment holding company or for your families, when you talk to your managers, again, depends. Your children or those in the audience who are 30 years old, more aggressive, you want high growth, high return. You're willing to risk more. But those someone now you're already in your 60s, if you have an investment manager, you don't want any more high return because high risk. You want steady dividends because we're at the stage ayaw na natin mawala yung ating nest egg. Okay, that's an example. Next slide. So here now our contact persons, it's geographically based. If you want to open a BDO Prime account, feel free to approach one of them. Just say that I referred you. Okay, that's all I wanted to say. The next slide. Okay, now I'm already at the last section already of my talk. Just some investments to consider, and then it's really a segue into the open forum. Because again, investments are specific to your needs and how much money you have, okay? And where you are in life. Next slide. But in general, okay, you remain invested because cash is safe. But sa totoo lang, sometimes if inflation is 5%, you make 1% on your cash. Actually, lugi ka ng 4%, diba? So you want to invest pa rin ideally. And you stay with what you know, diba? So for example, if you have no access to living abroad or don't invest abroad kasi paano mo mababantayan, di ba? Better to invest in something in the Philippines na alam mo talaga what's happening. So, and then we are Philippines, we're resilient, we will rebound. That's why I think the long term will still do well despite this new government. And what I'm seeing anyway, it's good they have good economic managers, so I'm hopeful. Renminbi, US dollar, sovereign, those are something to consider. Still TINA. I forget what TINA stands for. Kasi parang it's you're not the last, diba? We're not the last to come in anyway, but anyway, it's something to invest. And then we want to focus on sustainable. ESG is important, but environmental, sustainable, it's good, but again, be open with investments like coal because you can still make money. But if you really are averse to that, they're good investments naman. And then go overseas, equities are still a good investment. Okay, next slide, please. There are still many risks. Of course, the war is not sure what's happening. Globalization is having a negative effect on costs. So we have to be sure. COVID now, it's not a pandemic, it's endemic. We have to live with that. So but that also affects the investments, diba? That also affects will BPOs come back in. It affects also condo prices if you're renting them out. House prices, maybe there's still going to be a yield. Prices in Makati are still going to be extremely high. I'm not sure about high prices elsewhere. For example, BPOs, naubusan ng English speaking, they're looking elsewhere. So meron, but those are where the growth areas will be because sometimes the growth is faster na in selected cities outside Metro Manila. Tech is there, but it's very hard. They'll soft landing, hopefully abroad, not hard landing as rates are being managed, but those impact the Philippines, diba? But generally, we're still resilient. Our investors, there's a lot of investors in the Philippines. There's a lot of the youth. I believe that these last 2 years were a loss. Our children who went to school, hybrid, kawawa naman, it was a lost decade. Some people call it, but hopefully makabawi. But hopefully some of you as parents also were able to compensate and gave them additional incentive or made them read other stuff, learn other stuff. Next slide. Okay. China is going to be strong, managed. I guess this is just from another colleague, Mr. Roy Ramos from the UP. He heads our investment committee, was sharing this information. So something to consider lang. China, of course, Russia now, even what's happening with Germany, a lot of their pipeline is from Russia. So they're dependent on Russian oil and gas. Now, if there are all these problems, magkakagulo-gulo sila. Tayo, at least we're medyo not just dependent on one country. But next slide. And then, of course, here, the US is still a good investment, especially those with US relatives. I think buying some of the US, these good companies, the Apples, etc. I think are good investments long term. They should do well, or even maybe I like Tesla. Even if Elon Musk is disruptive sometimes, but I think things will go well. So those might be some worthwhile investments. At least look for the best of breed, good companies, good management. Next slide. And then here, this is just me, but never mind. So this is who we are. We've done very well this last 20 or so years that I've been with BDO. I've been really happy with them, and I hope to retire with them. Next slide. That was just a plug. Oh, there you are. So now we can go into the Q&A. Now I will pass the floor back to Vicky and maybe to Cora. Not yet closing, diba? Q&A ba muna? Then pass the floor back to you, Cora. So take it away, please.
Q&A muna tayo, and thank you very much for that very comprehensive presentation, Idol.
Yeah, ikaw nga idol eh. That's why nga si Cora is the world-renowned photographer, weightlifter, favorite investor relations head globally, multi-awarded.
Ikaw sikat dito, hindi ako. So anyway, that was really very comprehensive, and thanks a lot for sharing your time and talent with us, Ed. So Arlene will be also with me in the Q&A. She'll be monitoring the chat box. But while we're waiting for some questions, ang dami kong tanong sa'yo if you don't mind.
Sure. Yeah, basta feel free to ask any question.
You mentioned about currencies.
Yes.
How about the Russian ruble, which has been performing really well over the last 12 months? No, is there any access to that here?
Here wala yata kasi before also somebody asked me Iran eh. Because at one point someone had a suitcase of Iran currency, and then they asked could they exchange it. Hindi yata pwede dito eh. But you're right, diba? Russia was trying to do something, and in fact, diba, akala ng US pababagsakin yung currency, it strengthened pa nga, no? But
the currency nila, they're the best performing asset.
Yeah. Yun nga. Ako lang, because nga lang it's very volatile, and because I guess they have different strategies. I would not recommend it. Maybe a small portion if you had, but it's also hard to access. So, and it's very illiquid. So I wouldn't recommend tayo muna invest in Russia. I would recommend pa renminbi na lang pa, because at least we're really trading a lot with them.
I see. Okay. So Arlene, are there questions in the chat box?
Yes, Cora. This is from the ex-boyfriend of Vicky.
Sino yan?
Nolly. Okay.
Tama, ex-boyfriend yan. Ex-boyfriend.
Ex-boyfriend niya yun. He wants to ask, he's asking is it better to invest in individual equities or just invest in mutual funds? And then,
very good question. Yeah. Okay. What's the second one?
Yeah, okay. The second one is, how do you rate investments in Pag-ibig MP2, tax-free interest income, and with a sovereign guarantee, so your investments are relatively safe? Okay.
Sige, first one muna. Well, si Nolly nga, ang sinasabi ko, yun yung idol ko eh. Retired, pero busier pa nga now. And then, I don't know if you've seen a picture or fellow alumni of Nolly. he looks fitter now than he has in his last 50 years yata. Even Nolly lost 20 pounds yata from exercise and not eating.
75.
Ilan ba, Vicky?
75.
75 pounds?
Wow.
Grabe. Wait, so Nolly, ano ka na lang ngayon? Grabe, no? Parang, but anyway, just to show you, ang tela lang niya, lugi na siya sa tela ngayon. Or pwede, ang hirap magparetoke ng toilet na. But sila Nolly had their own tailoring shop before. And that's how I knew them. Anyway, I'll answer your question. Sometimes investing in stocks, no, if you invest in a mutual fund, first of all, without your knowing it, may bayad yan sa fund manager. Sometimes there's a charge of anything between 0.5 to 1%. Even if they don't charge you outright, in their net fee, they deduct already their expenses. So you're paying for that. Investing in mutual funds is good if you don't have time to make bantay. So I also have some mutual funds, especially let's say abroad, kasi hindi ko nababantayan, so I invest in mutual funds. Or let's say you like a certain theme. Because sometimes if you want to buy, let's say in telcos, example lang, or regional, so at least that's worthwhile. But sometimes if you know specifically what's happening, for example lang, I'll use an example related kay Nolly, because Nolly worked for the JG Summit Group before. He was directly working, or Lance Gokong Way was getting advice from Nolly. So if Nolly, let's say, specifically wants to invest in URC, diba? Because he understands what's happening in URC, and because his apo buys URC products, he believes in the new product, then for me, that's worth investing. Kasi you have some connection there, diba? For example, let's say si Dada Kua, because she's an expert in banking, and she knows what's happening. She was doing correspondent banking before. I don't know, kilala niya, big time yan. She's talking to all the banks. So therefore, she knows what's happening in payments, and she wants to invest in a bank or a company that's into payments. Okay lang yan, because that's her
trading continuously. So why not?
So it depends. But if it's general and geographically hindi nyo nababantayan,
You have to.
yeah, okay lang. So then you invest. I guess the easy answer is, for stocks that you specifically know, okay lang to invest directly. Basta you have direct access. But if you don't have access geographically or time zone or whatever, a mutual fund is still worth it. Okay, that's the first one. Second one is, Nolly, I don't know what the Pag-ibig fund is, but sometimes, okay, here lang is my thought. Without knowing what it is, if it's ROP back, sovereign risk, then okay lang. If it will give you a yield higher than the government, example, if you bought a government bond today, the last auction for a 5-year is around 5.5-6% already. So if it's giving you higher than 6% because it's Pag-ibig, because it's not direct, but it's giving you better than that. And sometimes you remember sa atin, if you have parents, let's say, who were with the military, you can invest in mga AFSLI or whatever, because these are almost parang government guaranteed, but limited to dependents. Kasi those are unique opportunities. You can take advantage as long as you diversify. So something like that, maybe it's only open to you, for example, Nolly, but it's limited, you can take advantage. But just don't put everything there, kasi even if it's supposedly risk-free, sometimes nagkaka-problema, magkaka-delay, may ipit ka rin. Okay? I hope that answers it. Thank you, Nolly. Thank you, Ardeen.
Okay, and ano yung what's your prognosis on the peso? Kasi ang laki na nang din-depreciate niya. It's about 9% so far this year.
Yes.
Do you see it strengthening again, especially towards December, or is there any further weakness?
No, I agree with you. Tama naman. Lahat naman tayo nagbabantay. First of all, di ba, all of us know na, di ba, the peso always appreciates generally in two times during the year. May seasonality. And one is around June, or baka hindi na June yan, kasi the first strengthening of the peso is when the OFW send money for pangbayad ng tuition. Diba? So I don't know if it's June, kasi ngayon yata maging September na yata klase or October. So, but basta pag dumadating, daming dollars dumadating, kasi the reason I know that also is because 50% of the worldwide remittances of the country go through BDO. So alam namin. Pero hindi rin tumatagal. The deposit account sa beneficiaries, sa asawa, sorry, kasi this is a majority women eh. Itong mga asawa nyo, mga loko-loko rin eh. Kasi yung mga OFWs yung tratrabaho abroad, padadala yung pera dito sa asawa, lalaki. Pagdating ng pera, ubus ka agad. Kasi pinangbababae, pinangbibili ng alcohol, pang good time, di ba, dapat para sa pamilya. So nauubos ka agad. But nakikita namin yan. So that's the first. The second is Pasko. And that's why, Cora, I guess you're alluding to that. Generally, Christmas, magsa-strengthen yung peso because mapasok yung dollars. Pero usually September, nag-weaken yung peso. Why? Because the importers naman buy their inventory. They start stocking up inventory. They have to buy dollars pambili para may goods sila pangbenta ng Christmas. That's always been seasonal. That always happens. But what we're hoping is because, as mentioned nga, when the BSP increased rate 75 basis points, the peso strengthened by 40 centavos. But it's still above 56. I'm hopeful na it will go back to the 55 level year end. Can it go back to the 54, 53? Yung aming economist nga was saying, di ba, I think my chart earlier was 53 something. Baka it's a little difficult na kasi masyadong malaki jump. But I think 54, 55 is still doable the year end pag nag-stabilize na lahat. And then especially, di ba, if we show that our economy is doing better, that this new administration, magandang plano, nag-SONA na, the first SONA, and then maganda, and then investments will come in, the peso will strengthen. Because we'll see if the US is going to be magre-recession na, and then now safety will be putting it back into the emerging market, and the Philippines hopefully will be a darling kasi will be growing faster than the rest, baka mag-strengthen yung peso. So I'm just hopeful.
But if there are expectations of recession, and also you have the Fed kasi already announced that they might increase Fed rates by about a percentage point, one full percentage point. So that could affect the equities market there, which means that it could also affect the equities market here. So when's a good time to buy equities for the Philippines?
Very good question, and even I don't know the answer. Kasi look at it this perspective. I'll example lang. Ayala Corp, diba? Even if I'm supposed to be buying only SM stocks, Ayala Corp, at one point na 1,200 pesos na yan. And ang ganda ng mga negosyo ng Ayala, diba? BPI, Ayala Land, Globe. I guess those are their three cornerstones. And then they now have hospitals, they have healthcare, they have infrastructure. If you think about it, they have ASEN, their energy is building up. This Eric Francis, a good friend. Ang ganda ng negosyo. And yet, if you think about it, they're in these good industries, their stock price is around 600 plus. It is almost parang historical low yata. If you break all the companies up, the stock price should be 800, 900 pesos easily, but it's at 600. So therefore, if you look at it that perspective, you say, uy, bili na tayo. Diba? So last month, bumili ako at mga 660, 670 yata. Kasi yung philosophy ko. Pero because I bought at 650, 670, lugi pa ako ng 40, 50 pesos per stock the last few weeks. Pero if you have the holding capacity to wait maybe in a year, maybe that 600 will go back to 800, 900. Kikita ka ng 50%, di ba? Pero kung titignan mo every day, oh no, yung aking investment na binili ko at 650, 620 na lang ngayon. So that's a 5% loss, 10% loss, iiyak ka naman. So, stocks, some of the stocks, especially the blue chips, are good investments, pero pwedeng bumagsak pa the next few weeks because nga, pag especially nga, di ba, pag sinipon ng US and then bumagsak yung stock market nila, bumabagsak rin dito, even if our companies are doing well, that's why pwede tayong matamaan. That's why when the traders say sideways or may resistance level, it's more of that. But if the Philippines lang was, diba, no man is an island, the Philippines is an island archipelago nga, pero natatangay pa rin tayo ng what's happening the rest of the world, we will always have this volatility. That's why matatamaan. So I guess what's my answer? It's still good to buy stocks. You can start buying in stocks. If you had a strategy, maybe let's say, example lang, you had 100,000. If you buy stocks 10,000 a month, you spread it out every month. Basta mag-average ka na lang para mas may security ka. Don't buy everything today and then matutulog kasi baka bumagsak. But if you start buying 10,000 on the average, hopefully, in a year's time, yung average stock mo na yan, magdodoble, mag-50% return. So that's one way to look at it. And of course, not everything into stocks also. Buy bonds and other things.
That's a good advice. So, yung gasoline, where do you see it?
Gasoline naman. I guess my question is this also. Do you, again, may seasonality yan, di ba? First of all, why did gasoline prices go down? Because hopefully of course, may gera pa sa Ukraine, but in general, at least the way I was reading it, because China suddenly was having pneumonia, and they're one of the largest users of, I guess, of energy, biglang the global demand suddenly weakened, di ba? Because of what's happening in China. So I guess it depends. If China continues with their COVID policy, which I think is parang unrealistic, di ba? Nila lockdown na nila lahat. And therefore, if they lock down cities, economy is not going to grow, and parang in denial, and then therefore mababa. That means oil, I think, as a globally will not do well. And then OPEC, while we were preparing for the 9 o'clock, I was just reading up also on OPEC. There's still full production. By full production, that means mag-aaway sila sa presyo. Prices will go low. So meaning, prices will go lower, which is good for us, di ba? But here's the counterpoint naman. At the end of the year, pag nag-winter, does oil demand go up or down? Winter. Di ba it goes up? Kasi lumalamig eh. So everything from China to Korea to Europe, the US, tataas ang oil demand because they have to buy because they need it for heating, which they don't need now, diba? So therefore, that might be the counter. But okay, but if wala ng gera, mag-stabilize yung gera, and then if China gets out of the lockdown, oil prices will go up. I see that kasi demand will go up. But if the way things are happening now, because before we started, I just checked on CNN. CNN was reporting nagkakagulungan, even some bank, they're freezing the accounts of those who are in these lockdown areas. Wala na ang pera, weird ka sa China, tapos lockdown pa, frozen pa yung bank accounts, so wala silang pambili. Magkakagulo sila doon. So therefore, demand is not going to go so higher, and good for us. That means our commodity prices, fuel prices in the Philippines will be stable. It's interesting because just the start of this week, when I was trying to refresh the slides, JP Morgan yata was predicting 300 pesos per barrel oil end of the year versus, I think it was CFSB predicting 100. So very divergent, even these experts. Oh, may isa 300, isa 100. Grabe. Parang start of the week. I was just trying to get updates kasi ako rin naman, frankly, the way I work, kasi I just have to keep on reading and find out what all the experts are saying. And sometimes, the challenge is all of us in this audience. Sometimes you have so much information, hindi mo alam kung sino paniniwalaan, di ba? And there's a deluge of information. So me, I just also have to dissect and see what makes sense most of all. Pero minsan conflicting. Here is how it's related lang. If you're investing in an oil company, if you're investing in an oil company with a refinery, then your oil company will lose money, diba? Because they have to buy the crude themselves, etc., etc. If they're just a trader, then if they can buy cheap oil, ipapasa nila agad. So again, depende rin anong strategy or what kung integrated or not. But that's a very good point. But sana we can do that, because if we can do that and walang problema from the government perspective, hindi sila ipitin, then that will help the country, diba? Nice.
Yeah, just another point also, kasi there's an impending food crisis. That's what at least a lot of the world leaders are saying. Are there agri-based investments that we can look at?
Yun ang malaking problema natin. Kasi again, here's another thing to think about. What's the definition of food security? Diba? Kasi there were two we were having discussion years ago. Food security, one person was saying, food security doesn't mean we should have stockpile on rice. Example lang, rice security. Rice security means you're secure lang na if maubusan lang tayo ng price, we should have arrangements lang with other countries where we can buy. That already makes us secure. Diba? The fact that may supply ka that you can buy from at a certain price. Ngayon, the problem is, what if biglang umahas o mag-withdraw nga yung dapat bibili mo, let's say Vietnam or whatever. So even the rules of the game are changing. But you're right. So I guess the agri side, I don't know if it's good or bad, and I defer. Maybe the rest of you in the audience, what do you think? I would have wanted sana as not the president to be the Department of Agriculture, because that's a very important para matutukan ng gusto, because agri is something na napabayaan in the Philippines. Except me naman, I also believe for us to get our act together in agri, we have to allow corporate farms, di ba? Because this thing na ginawa nila Cory, or I don't know if it's her or P-Region, masyadong maliit yung 2 or 3 hectares, walang economies of scale. Kaya wala nang gusto maging farmer sa atin, di ba? And then, I guess tayo lang, we wanna be gentle and farmers, but that's not enough to make it really worthwhile. So unless the SMs, the Ayalas have not even really gotten into agri, I've talked in the past to this large Charwen Pokpan. I've also talked to Cargill. They're really interested. Their problem is, or even sila Manny Pangilinan, Metro Pacific, they would be interested if they're allowed to do corporate farming. Diba? That's why the successful ones, dapat Noli, if you're in the audience, baka you can share how did Dole, or kayo, Ricky, expert kayo, tumira kasi sa Polomolok. The fact na that only works because, Vicky, paano ba yan? The land is leased, diba? Long-term lease from the farmers.
Yes, Though leased it from many people.
O yan, pero madami silang kausap, pero it was arranged in such a way, long-term lease. Diba? Vicky, kwento mo na pinaputukan kayo ng barel. Tinagtad yung bahay niyo. Bakit nga ba? Yun yung experience, maganda experience. Kwento ni Vicky.
That's for another session.
Security yan Si Noli, umiikot yan, parang Little Mayor yan, naka-flak jacket. Tapos isang umaga yata, tinadtad ng Armalite yung bahay nila Vicky. Kasi si Noli, nakakagalit yata niya yung mga workers niya or something. But anyway, food security is important. That's why Dole and Del Monte are good examples. Banana industries are good examples.
Like listed companies that are food-based, what do you recommend?
So, Monde Nisin I would recommend, but only after maano itong issue na to. But again, depende na, even food companies, iba-iba Monde Nisin is a food company, URC is a food company, but they're actually, they're more in the packaging already, making the finished product, and they import it, They're not naman into
the Jollibees and the Max.
Jollibees, example naman, Jollibee is a food company, but they're really more, wait, did my screen is example lang Jollibee. They're a food company, but they import most of their food supply, diba? Because at one point, si Isme Baisi, the CFO, so a good friend, they wanted to really source from Philippine agri. Okay, you know what their problem was? The suppliers in the Philippines were not stable enough. They were not big enough. They could not give the requirements that they needed. That's why they had to import. I remember at one point, even, kasi ako like eating the palabok. Di ba sa palabok may maliliit na shrimp? Yung shrimp had to be imported kasi wala maka-give ng supply. So what they've done already, I think a few years back, they did the tie-up with Cargill. They started investing in some broiler plants to buy. But it's not enough. So that was more a CSR project. But I'm not sure how much money they'll really make. But I guess that's what even San Miguel is doing. They have integrated growers, etc. But food is very important. But sometimes sila pa nga are trying to help. Pero the example yata is Bounty, although they're not listed. Diba? Because pag napeste sila, ang laki ng talo nila, diba? So for some of you in the audience na may piggery or may African swine, papatayin lahat, maski you're trying to do everything, or yung mga manok nyo, you have to kill everything and then you cannot sell it. Di naman pwede kumain tayo ng double dead, di ba? Bawal yun. So, yun. So, it's riskier versus, example, yung isang kliyente, I tried to do an IPO, North Star Merchants, they're importers of meat. They're the ones doing all the meat for SM Bonus and etc. Hindi lang natuloy, but sila, they're extremely profitable. They just import. But sila, how do they mitigate risks? They have they import from many countries para they have a hedge. And then their other hedge was they wanted to invest sana and a good industry to invest in is cold storage. Because the bigger your cold storage capacity, you blast freeze, you can last it longer. You have more supply, di ba? But you need money for the cold storage. You need money for the inventory. But yeah, so Max is not doing so well yet, although they have a good model. They changed, their new president is already Ariel Fermin yata ng PLDT. They're changing the model. The fast concepts, they're doing well again now because people are eating out already, are buying food, di ba? In the past kasi, if you were just gonna rely on takeout, it's not enough. Sa rent pa lang, talo ka na eh. So the quick service, the fast food, they're doing well. Even Bistro is my client. They're doing extremely well. Figaro kasi they did the IPO recently, but the bulk of the money did not go to Figaro. The bulk of the money in the Figaro IPO went for Angel's Pizza because si Jerry Liu, the owner, wanted to invest more, expand the Angel's Pizza model. Rather, the coffee kasi limited lang, he didn't see so much growth. But as an example lang, even here's a kwento lang, even si Manny Villar, when he makes kwento to me, I'm assume everybody knows Coffee Project, di ba? Alam mo ba yung Coffee Project, kaya niya tinayo yun kasi ayaw siyang pansinin ng Starbucks.
That's what I heard.
Kasi, di ba, he wanted to open Starbucks in his malls. Sabi ng Starbucks, baduy kayo, hindi pwedeng markado nyo. Kaya nagtayo siya ng Coffee Project and it's doing so well, mag-IPO na siya. Because he made it so well, parang ito sili pang-asar lang sa Starbucks. And then now, it's doing so well. Now he's investing in other
So we should open an account with BDO para we can get the shares of Coffee Project.
Pwede. Later on, pwede rin naman, yeah. Coffee Project, all day, even ABS-CBN, nasa kanya nang yung frequency, di ba? So, of course, hindi pa nila alam gagawin yan, di ba? Pero hulog rin ng langit daw yun na nakuha nila yung franchise. Of course, iba kasing mga tao, mas malakas ang pull nila sa Diyos. So, nakakuha sila ng frequency.
We have another question. Yeah, because we've been talking about big investments. Para doon naman sa mga nag-uumpisa. Okay, there's a question here.
Sure.
Mona, yeah. My husband and I are in our 40s. Is it still wise to invest in equities given the volatile market? We have a BDO UITF since 2017 with 10,500 quarterly investment. However, it has incurred around 8% loss to date. What should we do? How can we earn more? Or how can we earn from UITF? And then she's asking, should we keep on investing in it, UITF equities, or stop and invest in other instruments instead?
Okay. Thanks for that question, Arlene. To the investor who bought the UITF, thank you for investing in UITF. I sorry lang that you lost money, but okay, let me step back. There was an earlier question on mutual funds, no? Mutual funds and UITF are the same animal. The only reason we have a different technology, different terms, is because if it is sold through the stock market, it's called the mutual fund. If it's sold through the banks, it's called the UITF. Iba lang yung regulator, so there's that arbitrage. But it's the same. But also, when you buy a UITF or a mutual fund, I'll use them loosely, it depends on what kind you're buying. Kasi sa dami rin. There can be a UITF that just invests in government bonds, very safe. There can be a UITF just invest in money market funds. Money market is meaning 1 year or less, safe but short term. There can be a UITF just equity or just high growth or just energy, etc. So, but in general, if this was the UITF na equity, yes, you lost money. Should you sell now? I don't think so kasi ano rin since UITF kasi it mark to market meaning it already revalues on what the proper price is. So kumbaga, if it's lost 8%, let's say you put in 100 pesos, it's worth 92 pesos na lang now, no? 8%. Pero yung 92 na yun, by keeping it there, hopefully in 1 year, as I said, baka bumalik ng 30%, baka naman maging 110 yan in next year. So I don't recommend selling it now since you already took the proper accounting, or they did the proper accounting. The question is, should you invest more? My philosophy naman is, kasi you're in your 40s, if let's say you had an extra 20,000 pesos a month, maybe you put, let's say, 70% in fixed income. Buy more bonds, siguro. Para may continue steady. But maybe the 20 or 30%, well, if that is, let's say, 10,000 a month, 5,000, and dagdagan niya lang sa UITF siguro. But you diversify na lang. Pero don't, that's one strategy. The reason also kasi you might say, do I buy corporate bonds now? Remember, if you buy a corporate bond today, again, it's relative. Here's an, let's say you had 20,000 pesos. You can buy a corporate bond. You can buy Ayala or SM bond. If you bought today, it might be 6%, 6.5%. So if you're willing to get 6% quarterly, or 6%, that's the annual. So on per quarter, that's mga 1.5% per quarter. But if you're willing to get that for the next 5-7 years, okay lang. At least may steady income ka rather than 1% sa bangko. Pero if you think about it naman, if you're investing it through a holding company, if interest rates go up 2 months from now and they go up by 2%, that bond you bought will have a mark-to-market loss. Parang on paper lang kasi tumaas yung interest rates eh. But if you're just buying and you're buying and hold, meaning you don't care where interest rates go, you're happy with 6%, then buy na, you're getting a better investment. So that's one way to look at it. So maybe it's more a question, buy some SM, buy some Ayala, buy JG Summit, or buy a Meralco, buy a Manila North Tollway or an SMC Global, para at least you have a diversification.
Vanji, you have a question? You're muted.
Vanji, you're on mute. Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah, regarding food security, no, I think there are corporates like, of course, Ed has mentioned Bounty owned by the Cheng family. They are into poultry and piggery. And they have elevated the level of raising chicken, the kind that
it's like
they
a science, diba?
They require their the contractors really to build such kind of houses, no longer like the provincial type we're in. It's just people feeding the chicken, di ba? Yung sa probinsya.
Yes.
They just
dati may boy ka lang, magwawalis ka lang
boy.
sa ilalim.
Right
Lalaglag
now,
lang. Yeah.
They monitor, they have to maintain that level of temperature inside. Even that one who watches, there's only one person who watches, maybe several houses, but nobody goes inside during the period.
Correct.
That is why
diba?
Within a shorter period, instead of 30 days, they're able to harvest. It becomes 28 days. So by that time, and turnover is faster. I think that's how Bounty has elevated that kind of. They're strong really in poultry, in the poultry business, even in the egg laying. Now, with regard to rice, I think another company that is, I think it's still private, is the SL Agritech. They've gone into hybrid rice, which yields more kilos per hectare. They have, but there is always still that hesitancy among our farmers to adopt, because it's more scientific. You have to follow certain. It's not just they just throw the binhi, as they say in farming. When the traditional farmers would just say, I'll just throw the binhi. This one, there is transplanting. So I think there's a lot that has to be done for our farmers or even fisher folks, that they have to learn. And maybe even the next generation from the parents, the younger generations, no longer want to go into the traditional farming. Nobody wants to be a farmer. So in spite of our hectares and hectares of land, these have been transformed into subdivisions instead of being just agricultural lands. So I guess this is where there's lack of government support also from the agri sectors. No, I know these people. That's why sabi ko it's the waste, because there's not enough support. So we have those resources, but it's not being used.
So that's Arlene, galing mo ah. But kaibigan mo si Henry Limbyong at saka sila sila Tennyson Cheng.
Henry Limbonyong is my client. Was my client
That's
when I was in
why.
BDO. The Sterling
Oh,
Timber Group.
That's why alam na alam mo.
Si Henry.
Yun.
Of the
Yes.
Federation.
Yeah, si Henry yung maganda pa yung kwento ni Henry, but but basically nakita niya yung nanay niya kasi passed away in a car accident.
Yeah, binaril. Na-aksidente, sorry, not binaril.
Diba, tapos
sila
nagpakita. Oo, nagpakita yung nanay na spirit yata. And then sinabi, itong tanim mo na to, gamitin mo. And magic price mo.
The Chinese scientist.
Correct.
Chinese scientist
Yes.
to develop the hybrid rice seeds for them.
Right.
So
yun. Correct. And then early ng problema nga kasi ng farmers natin, aside from
It's
ayaw na yung
Vanji,
farming
Ed.
kasi
Vanji. That's Vanji.
Vanji. O kasi tamad na sila mag
Oo, ayaw. They
ayaw
don't want to learn.
gusto nila, ayaw nila syempre call center, gusto nila sa aircon. And then mahirap kasi sa hybrid rice, mga farmers, ang problema, unless the government guarantees it, ayaw naman natin magpautang sa farmer kasi ang nangyayari sa farmer, pag binigay mo yung pera pang feedstock, dapat they will invest in hybrid rice kasi is more expensive than ordinary rice. Pero mas mataas yung yield. Pero ginagawa nila, pag napeste kasi hindi guaranteed, wala na. Tapos ang nangyayari, naghihintay na lang sila. Parang there's this vicious cycle eh. So
But
unless
don't
that
you
is
give them
fixed,
insurance also?
walang complete insurance eh. Hindi atang meron bang crop insurance?
There used to be the Philippine crop insurance, but I'm not sure if that is still being done. But in the case of SL, they do support. They lend to them for this harvest season and then pay at the end. They have a way, but it requires substantial investment.
Oo nga. Pero if you think about it, if ganun kaganda sana ang return, why doesn't the government buy all the rice na lang from an SL Agritech para mataas yung yield? Tapos yun ang bigay nila sa farmers, di ba? Or i-subsidize nila. So parang mga ganun solution sana eh. Kasi, I mean, Bounty is an example kasi they're my neighbors also. I'm close to them. So,
the innocent, Tennyson Che.
Yeah. Sila and the brothers and sisters live in Valle Verde. Yes. So I was there sa anniversary pa yata ng parents or something. There was this big event. Oo, di ba? The parents, di ba? Golden anniversary yata ng parents. Ang galing. 90 years old na yata nun. Nag-celebrate pa sila nun. But that was pre-COVID. But anyway, they're a close family. They're an example of embracing technology. Kasi parang robots na yata. That's why the yield is so high. That's an example of an agri company na parang an extra day na hindi nila ibenta pag maximize na yung growth, yung timbang, lugi sila. Because mas mahal magpakain kaysa ibenta. So they have it to that point na science. So talagang timbang na timbang, how many days maximizing feeding and everything. Tapos kagad you have to sell it kaagad to the Jollibees of the world, etc. to the SM. But sana nga there are more of that, but kulang nga eh, yun ang problema.
Okay, Arlene, there's a
Ed, we have a question. You talk about insurance. Now we have a question here from Bridget. I think you know Bridget.
Yes.
Yes. She's asking why is investment not in the where's that ba? Okay, remember you have a pyramid. Okay,
yes.
Why is insurance not part of the investment pyramid? And then I think we should set aside some funds for estate taxes, not to burden our law when we die. Okay. When all your
tama.
are wiped out if you get critically ill. So
good point.
Yeah.
No, I forgot to add that in the pyramid, but I agree. That's why I also mentioned now we should set aside for illness and everything. No, maybe lang kasi when you think about it, insurance by itself is technically not an investment, diba? Although it's protection nga. But you're right, it's a form of investment, so it should be there. The problem we have nga in the Philippines is that ang dami na dumating na insurance companies. They've always thought that ang dami na sunog eh, kasi even foreign. They invested in the Philippines 10 years ago because from a economic perspective, parang the per capita income of the Philippines, we should be buying more insurance. Except the coverage up to now is so low. Filipinos are underinvested. And maybe those of your financial planners, but that's what we're telling our customers. They're not covered. Diba, there's a rule of thumb pa nga of dapat you should be insured X% multiple of the income or your monthly expenditures when you retire. Kung yung cash flow mo, you should be insured to protect that, and even for health. So the way I look at it, I actually right now they break up insurance into two things. There's they call it there's insurance na protection lang traditional, and there's the investment
and variable.
The variable. So you can break it up,
health.
depending on how you are. Some will say the variable part, instead of buying a variable insurance, I'll just invest that separately. But yes, you need that protection. So I also endorse that. You should buy insurance at least for your critical illness, for your estate taxes. The good thing lang now, our friends, diba, before estate taxes were 20% or something. Now it's down to 6%. So mas mabilis na. Diba? That's important. And then also, just as a tip, pag may mangyari yan, hopefully kaibiganin niyo yung branch manager niyo. Para pag may nangyari, pag namatay bigla isa sa inyo or kamag-anak, i-withdraw nyo kaagad. Kung kaibigan niyo yung recorded pala to, pero sana hindi. Pero basically, kausapin nyo para malipat kaagad para wala nang you pay as little taxes as possible.
Okay, Bridget, you want to comment on that also, on your question? Are you satisfied?
Yeah, maybe you can expound na lang on insurance. What's the rule of thumb, Bridget, para the rest of the audience will know?
Naka-mute ka, Bridget.
Hi.
Kasi sharing naman to. Yes, go ahead.
Actually, 10%. 10% of
Of your expenditures?
Income. Yeah, oo.
So example lang. Let's say or income. So let's say today, example. Let's maybe give example. Let's say on your monthly income should be, let's say, 100,000. Diba? You're expecting that. So 10% is 10,000. What does that mean, Bridget? 10,000 dapat yung what? Yung expected dividends were from your insurance policy? Or 10?
Actually, ang rule of thumb is 120 months of expenses. So, kunyari 10 years, diba? Worth of, dapat yun ang coverage mo.
Okay. So, kung expenses mo is 100,000, 120 of that is 12 million yata. So, therefore, you should have insurance of 12 million.
Yes, oo.
Ayan, parang ganun. Okay. Para protected ka.
Okay.
So ideally, and as an investment also, you should already be paying, investing in that insurance para hindi nang lump sum, para at least in the future, then it will also have dividends. So that's the one way to look at it.
And with regard to life insurance, the problem with some is there's that hesitancy to get an insurance because they are bound to pay for the premiums.
Yes.
And like during the time of COVID, when people lost their jobs, they could no longer continue paying for the premium, whether it be quarterly, semi-annual, or annual. So there's always that fear. There's still that fear. Maybe that's why Filipinos are underinsured, because there's that fear that if I can't pay the premium, what you paid, the insurance company will not give you back. The insurance company is not going to give you a rebate for what you had already paid in the past. Right. So that's one of the maybe.
Yeah, that's a valid point. Yeah. I don't know nga lang if they were able to do something about that. Kasi nga, even from a lending perspective, di ba may balikbayan, or I forget the term. They gave a reprieve. I don't know if the insurance industry
bayanihan.
O the bayanihan, di ba, para makatulong nga sana for the investors.
I just think for some they allowed a postponement.
Oo, di ba, sana hindi naman na forfeit, di ba, maski. Agree.
You could have paid for 3 months after the premium which was due.
Right.
All right.
Arlene, there's one more question.
Another one.
Yeah.
Wait,
Ed, how much more time do you have?
Okay lang.
Okay.
I have time.
All right.
Importante kayo. Kaya kumakain na lang ako ng choknut.
Kapag-antay ang amazing.
Retro pa rin. Ito yung pagkain, retro eh.
Not
Go ahead,
tayo,
Arlene,
baka
please.
sinilin tayo niyan.
Yeah, right. O, sige. Coming from Juliet, okay, about LTNCD.
Okay.
There are several questions here. How much is the minimum amount to invest? Okay, 4% is based on investment amount ba or fixed rate. And then she has a follow-through question. Okay, compare LTNCD invest for 5 years plus versus corporate bonds that can yield 5% for 5 years net. Is one better than the other or same lang or both good to invest?
Ganda naman ang question ni Julie. Okay, I'll try to answer it quickly. Wait, for LTNCD, I think the minimum is 500,000 pesos. So, but that they're making it a little bit more selective, pero 0% tax, right? Currently, nobody's offering it nga, but if there's an LTNCD, please consider it kasi magandang yield. Now, the second question, corporate bond of 5%, let's say equal, 0-0 pareho, no? Between an LTNCD and a bond, if you're investing 500,000, example, I would prefer, currently walang LTNCD offering ang BDO kasi whenever we offer, usually in 1 week, ubus lahat ng ino-offer. I think the last we issued was 40 billion, ubus ka agad. So the way it works also is that even sa branch managers or sa investment managers, no, you nurture the relationship because tao rin yan eh. Kunyari, example let's say meron akong allocation as a relationship manager ng 10 million worth ng BDO LTNCD or Ayala bond. Pero I have 100 customers. 10 million lang hawak ko. Kung mabait kayo sa akin, kung lagi nyo pinapadala na ako ng Christmas gift or Christmas card, maalala ko, tatawagin ka kayo, di ba? Minsan ganun yan, unahan eh. Kunyari, ni-reserve ka agad ni Vicky yung 10 million. Minsan nga, gawin ko, Vicky, bigyan lang kita ng 1 million because I have to reserve for the clients. Pero you cannot service everybody. So that's one. But so, and then second, aside from that, there you have to look, if it were a bank versus a bond, remember, 500,000 or low, pag deposit, it's guaranteed. May PDI insurance, so may additional protection ka. So therefore, if the price is the same, I'd go for the bank kasi may insurance. Now, if it was, for example naman, buying between example lang, hindi ko alam yung pangalan ng bank, XYZ, Tuguegarao, Muslim, something bank, versus an SM bond. Diba? Even if I'm getting 6% from this XYZ bank na hindi ko kilala, but I'm only get 5% from SM, I'd rather go for SM kasi parang I'm getting 1% less, but I'm more comfortable. So you also have to be comfortable of who the issuer is. Diba? If let's say if it's an Ayala or an SM, I'm indifferent. Diba? But for example, if it were kunyari, kami ni Noli nagsosyo, we will borrow from 5%, but you can get 5% from Cora Guidote. Utang. Mas maganda pangalan ni Cora, kay Cora na lang kaya magpautang.
By the way, sa REIT, Ed, anong minimum investment?
Basta pag stock market, minsan 5,000 pesos lang yung minimum investment. If you buy yourself, of course, if you go to relationship manager, gusto lang malalaki. Pero if kung DIY nga, that's why nga for our children, even 5,000 pwede, minsan 3,000. Depends. Sometimes the minimum depends on the kind of issue. But kasi I remember no SM, I think the minimum investment yata for SM is 5 kasi di ba the stock price of SM is mga 800 something. So di naman pwedeng buli isang stock lang na 840 pesos. So I think 5 stocks is already 4,000 plus. Ayala is also the same, 800 plus or 1,000 pesos si SM pala. So although naman if you buy a mining stock, di ba sometimes itong ni Leandro Leviste, 1 peso yata, 150. So 5,000 pesos can at least buy you 5,000 stocks. Remember, you might own 5,000 stocks versus 1 stock. Are you richer because you have 1 stock or 5,000 stock? Necessarily depends also on the company. SM nga and Ayala are 3 digits na yung stock price. Leandro Leviste might be single digit. So it's depending more on the market value.
And how do we open an online account?
Yun. So there was in one of the slides, there's a contact there for BDO securities. Just contact that person para you can online open an account. If you have a BDO account, mas madali kasi you don't even have to physically show up eh. Online na lang talaga. Pero kung wala ka pang anong BDO account, you have to go to a branch yata to open an account.
I mean, a
Kasi at
bank
least,
account.
to a BDO branch, you need at least a SIG card para may physical signature and makita yung IDs.
Pero wala bang branch to branch fees pa yan? Kasi napansin ko sa BDO, if I withdraw from a different branch, they charge me extra.
Meron pa yatang ganun eh. Kasi I think the reason ginawa yan was because inabuso ng isang industry, but I will not name that industry. But anyway, basically, ideally nga, you open an account with the branch where yung malapit ka nakatira para yun ang main branch mo na lang. Tapos doon na lang, when you buy or sell stocks, doon i-deposit yung proceeds or doon i-withdraw yung proceeds para madali. Maganda kasi sa BDO, let's say you have a condo in BGC. So BGC ka na lang mag-open na account para doon lang i-debit yung account when you buy stocks. Tapos kunyari, you bought more SM stocks, nag-dividendo si Mr. Shaw or hindi na pala si Mr. Shaw, si John Ong or whatever, mag-dividendo. Then, ka-credit yung BDO account mo directly.
Magkano yung fees ninyo sa online?
I think 0.5% per trade.
Mm-hmm.
So, yun.
Per trade? Okay.
Per trade. Generally, ganun naman. That's the standard na. That's the low end na.
So you charge 0.5 on the buy and the sell, you also charge 0.5?
Yes, charge. And then may other taxes pa. So the effective cost, another 0.5 yata kasi because may VAT, may PDC-TC charges. So roughly, it's around a 1%.
1%. Okay.
Yeah.
Cora, may I ask Ed for another question?
Sure.
Yeah, you mentioned about Semirara. What is your insight about the mining industry? Kasi we have some of that we invested on that more or less. But
okay,
went down and down and down, but we're still holding on it until such time. But we'd like to get your insight on that, please.
Sige. Again, personal ko to. I am invested in it kasi I'm currently doing the stock rights offer for Philex also.
That's my stock also.
Yun. So Philex now is at 320 yata, 315, nag 8-9 pesos din, nakakainis nga. Pero I'm very hopeful because I'm doing the stock rights. Sila Manny Pangilinan we're raising 6 billion. They're buying SSS and the First Pacific Group have already committed to buy the 4 billion of the 6. That's how gung-ho they are. They how believe in it. So there's 2 billion left, which will be bought by the retail. We're selling. I think we're comfortable. I think that will do well. Kasi nga, ang baba na nga. Kung 350 na lang yata yung stock rights ng Philex, ang ganda ng project, ang ganda ng developments ng Pagkalmine. So, ang ganda, no? Maganda yung project kasi ubus na yung isa. Now, the key talaga is what is Bongbong's view on mining. Okay? Ang perception namin, by getting Loisaga, hopefully open naman si Loisaga in mining, hopefully hindi nila isasara ang mining. Kasi nga, my personal view also is that if done responsibly, it can contribute to another 1 to 2% of GDP to the economy, and we really need revenue. So why stop mining when it can help? Especially we're mineral rich, we need mining. Especially nga, kunyari, globalization, di na magbebenta ng ibang countries ng kanilang ore, whatever we need. We have to also have our own resources. So I'm hopeful. I'm also in close contact with Mike Toledo, who's from UP, who's the Chamber of Mines president. By his discussions with Bongbong and the cabinet, they seem open. So, and then when Philex, after it gets its stock rights, and then we will raise money for them, for their mine, we'll lend them money. They should be operating within a year. Kasi si Bing Bachoco yung CFO, I'm close to also. We're positive. In fact, if I may share with you, the SM Group is very positive in mining. Kasi, Cora, di ba, disclose ba yun yung tampakan? Is that a public info? O yun.
Yeah, they're into that also.
I lost touch with that.
They're investing on
so
that.
we are invested in it. So we also believe in mining. Of course, we've had to be more I guess patient kasi minsan nga purong sulong, and when it was Gina Lopez talagang wala nangyari sa mining. But hopefully now it will reopen, basta done responsibly, and that's good. And that also, I just wanted to dovetail. Cora and I having discussion earlier. If you're a small miner nga, if you're the BSP is buying gold, you just go there, they'll buy their gold. Except they don't sell, they're just buying lang yata. So they're making a market buying but not selling. So if you have gold, keep it na lang kasi what is it today? 1,800. It's also a good defensive investment. But or at least yung mga alahas na lang, sa Exidada, madaming alahas. So lagay lang niya sa vault niya, okay lang, tago lang niya. Or pag lumalabas, suotin mo naman paminsan-minsan para at least makakita ng oxygen yung mga alahas mo dada.
Banji, do you have a question?
Yeah, I was just going to ask Ed, for an average investor, would you advise to do online trading yourself or still to go through your traditional stockbroker? I mean, you don't have that much funds. Let's say you have some 100,000 or 200,000 that you'd like to invest in stocks. To do online trading, assuming you've done your study, you've gone through, you want to invest in an Ayala or an SM, what would you advise? Do the online trading yourself or use a stockbroker, the traditional stockbroker?
Sure. No, based on how you described it, if you have time naman and then you've studied it yourself, you do it yourself na lang para you don't have to pay fees. Diba? Kung limited naman. Saka sa atin kasi, diba, we should also at least parang nagbabasa tayo, we're keeping updated the news, especially kung otherwise, kung nasa bahay lang tayo, wala tayong ginagawa, mga ngamote yung mga utak natin. Like ako, nanonood pa rin ako ng K-drama para at least I keep abreast of who the developments are. So yes, you should invest kasi konti para it keeps you abreast of what's happening in current news and how it's affecting it. Of course, it's possible rin, hindi mo nabantayan, bumagsak, but hopefully, basta you buy the good stocks naman na medyo stable naman.
That you don't need to, kasi nga, you don't always, as you say, make bantay.
Hindi mo kailangan bantayan every day, yes.
Not every day, because if you check on it every day, the moment it goes down, you get stressed.
Correct. Ayaw na natin ma-stress, di ba? Tama.
Okay, I have one final question, Ed, and this is a bit more speculative kasi you've given us so much of your time, but the U.S. Treasurer said that they're moving towards digital currency by February next year. Is that going to, spill over to the rest of the world? Are we going to all go into digital currency over time?
Okay. No, ako naman, I was fortunate to have asked that question from our late nesting Espinilla. Because when did he pass away? 3 years na ba si nesting?
4 years before the pandemic pa eh.
Yun na, before. Or let's say 3 years ago. Kasi I was with I forget what foundation, one of my associations. We had a cryptocurrency seminar, and then he was our speaker also. And then one of our questions I asked was digital currency. Kasi first of all, there's a difference between cryptocurrency and digital currency of the sovereign. So a digital currency na peso, a digital currency na USD backed by the US government is different. That's not risky for me. It's just ease of use. It's just digital anyway. So even as things view if it's digital currency of your sovereign, okay lang yan. But if it's cryptocurrency, even he was worried and even I was worried naman na pwede kang matalo. Pero kung digital currency, kasi even now, I'm a little into it. If you buy stable coins, which are effectively linked to the dollar naman, they've been very stable. It's the Bitcoins that have lost money. Pero the USDT, the link to talaga, or it's backed by a currency, have been stable. So okay lang naman. So yes, digital currency, if it happens, is okay lang naman because we are shifting into digitalization. Effectively, we're doing a lot of digital transactions naman without even having a digital currency by doing more GCash and PayMaya. So if we'll just add more, okay lang yan because better na rin para we use less of our paper money para hindi tayo manakawan. Saka para you don't have to go to the ATM. Diba naging plastic na, nagkakaproblema pa yata with the ATMs, diba? Yung bagong polymer, I haven't seen the new 1,000 peso bill pa nga.
Bawal nga itiklop eh.
Oo nga, yun nga mahirap, di ba? Even checking nga, bawal ito tiklop, di ba? Hindi tatanggapin ng bangko nga.
Yeah. Anyway, well, I'd like to thank you, Ed. Is there going to be a closing remarks, Vicky?
I think Miss Kua will
okay,
share
Dada, please take the floor.
Dada, please
Hello,
show
hi.
your jewelry.
Hi, Ed. Hindi lang gold, diamonds. Ikaw naman.
Gold, diamonds. Diamonds naman, diamonds.
Oh. Diamonds are forever.
No, just kidding. But thank you, Ed. Thank you so much for your valuable time. Teka, naku, nagbabark yung aking aso. I'll close the door.
Okay lang. Okay lang.
Bark.
Okay lang yan. But anyway, dog lovers are the best people.
My laptop was dying, so natataranta ako. I was looking for the charger, nahanap ko na rin just in time to do the closing remarks. So I had to log on pa on my cell phone. Dahil na nga ako kay Vicky, ako yung closing remarks. And, you know, Ed, alam ko, you're such a busy person. This guy, napaka big time na kasi. Kanya, but we are so grateful that you are spending more than 2 hours for us this morning. I think all of us have learned a lot, you know, by listening to you. I forgot nga to wake up my daughter. Siya pa naman yung tatanong kagabi, like, Mommy, you have to teach me how to invest my money because she's going to work abroad in London lang naman.
Wow,
diba?
galing.
So,
Yeah.
nakalimutan ko nung when my son was saying, my son was here earlier, he really studies investment, etc.
Nice.
He rides the crypto, marunong siya mag-short sell.
Nice. Galing.
So sinakyan niya, he made money. Okay,
but
that's a different topic.
Yeah, galing.
Nag-short sell. But anyway, that's a different topic. But I think this morning, we learned a lot from you. Ang dami mong diniscuss, grabe. Nililista ko, masyadong madami. Preferred shares, stocks, equities, yung bonds, yung feeder funds. So for us, if we want to invest pala in abroad, di ba? You have the access, you provide access pala for us to be able to invest in those dollar feeder funds. No, that's very interesting. I'll take a look at that one.
yes, dapat kay ni Jimmy, of course, yes.
Ako yung nag-invest para sa amin. Pero pati oil price volatility, pati lahat na. And the nice thing to know is that si BDO, nag-tiering na kayo, strategize na kayo, depending on the capacity or the investment amount, no, that a person can invest in. Maganda yun kasi they will guide you, no? I belong to another bank nga pala, bakit ko pinopromote ang BDO?
Oo nga, nasa ka na ngayon? Hindi ka na PNB, no?
PNB.
Iliwanan naman kayo ng presidente niyo, naging DTI.
Nga Pero maganda yan, sasabihin ko sa PNB rin, kumanya.
Sige.
Pero very good strategy, and it will really help the investors, no, if somebody's guiding them, kasi mahirap nang mapaso with the stock market, you know. And you know, good thing we have the UITFs. You also have, like Bridget was mentioning, yung mga insurance na nakalink sa may investments in UITFs and all. Maganda rin yun, no? Because we, as seniors, marami dito seniors, we have to think about, you know, living something and preparing for the estate taxes of our loved ones, diba?
Yes.
But, you know, Ed, maraming salamat talaga for your time. We learned
thank you for inviting me. Yes. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Cora, Vicky, for inviting si
Galing ng
Ed,
Alumni Foundation nyo. Yeah. Or
galing,
anything I can do in the future, basta email me or text me na lang, everybody.
Galing. So, Vicky, can we show, we will allow me to present to you this certificate of appreciation to you, Ed. Meron kaming certificate of appreciation. Makakarating to sa'yo.
Yes, nakuha ko na. Salamat. And even the beautiful plate.
Ayan. Nandiyan na sa'yo. Ayan.
Yes, nakuha ko. Thank you.
Ang bilis for gracing us today with your and sharing your valuable time, talent, and wisdom on the topic of investment options. This 16th day of July 2022 in Manila, Philippines. And hindi lang papel yung aming ano sa'yo. This,
Yes, kaya ang ganda. Yeah.
Maganda yan. You know, if you want to see the live one that's in the high school building of Holy Spirit. Ayan.
Oh, okay.
Fernando Amorsolo artwork. And so may stand yan. Yung sa akin nga, naka-display sa pader. Pwede rin i-display sa amount.
Oh, yan.
Amount, no?
Oh, yan.
So
Nasa akin na. Nasa akin
na. Ayan. 8 by 12, no? Ayan. Bilis. Nandiyan na.
Oh, yan. Diyan na sa akin. Naka-display na sa den ko. Thank you.
So
Thank
it's
you,
a reproduction of the artwork of our maestro, si Fernando Amorsolo. And yun, you can see it nga. The live one, malaking-malaki yan. Going up from our 3rd floor yata, going to the 4th floor of our high school buildings. Kanya lang, pag dumalaw ka doon, baka may sumalubin lang na iba.
Oo nga, baka may multiple pa doon. Oo nga.
Lalo kung di ka taga Holy Spirit, baka may welcoming committee. So Ed, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Maraming salamat.
Maraming salamat.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good day.
Thank you, Ed.
Thank you again. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.